Brad. It would be fair to say, Premier, the whole province is on a first-name basis with you. Brad is the brand. And when I first started door knocking for the 2016 election, I became very versed very quickly in how that worked. The best spiel to get the coveted positive ID was to start with some variation of, "I'm here today on behalf of Team Brad Wall." If it wasn't a positive response, it usually went something like, "We're not voting for you guys," plural. If it was positive, the answer tended more toward, "I like Brad. Tell Brad he's doing a good job." And particularly our more senior supporters would often follow up with some additional tip or life lesson that was intended for Brad alone, that would serve him well. My colleague David Buckingham tells a funny story about door knocking one day. He wasn't getting anywhere with a family of new Canadians, just not communicating. And so he basically left things at, "Well, have a good day." A few minutes later, as he walked down the street, he heard the sound of screeching brakes. The guy whom David had just met at the door ran up to him. "Is this you?" he said, showing him some campaign material with Premier's photo on it. "You Brad Wall?" "No," David said, "I'm David Buckingham." "Oh," the guy said, disappointed, and walked back to his car and promptly took off. So how to explain it? The bond the province has with Brad. After all, a first-name basis goes with beloved leader territory. Maggie, Ronnie, Winnie. Brad is at root a populist. He loves the things we all love, the riders, vintage cars, camping, fishing, country music, although not so much I understand bro country, and of course his family. His expression always softens whenever he talks about you to us. Like any folk hero, he is part pastor, part actor, part advocate. And what an advocate. I think Brad proves fundamentally how much people love passion, love color, love boldness, love a bit of indignation sometimes, love being advocated for. In fact, they crave it. We're always told we don't love those things, that spin will always do as well, or bromides, or the daily medicine that is some social cause or response or other. That being passionate is self-aggrandizing. Well, when Brad came along, Saskatchewan craved a little self-aggrandizement. They craved someone who caught the ball of common sense, who sensed what mattered to people, broke free of process, and ran with it. Saskatchewan, before Brad, was used to respecting our betters in Canada, to sticking passively on the sidelines while other more powerful provinces or the feds determined our destiny. Who was this eloquent fighter, this advocate who exploded on the scene and stood up for the West, stood up for Saskatchewan? Brad changed the way we are seen forever. We live in a country, he said recently, where it has become seemingly prohibited to express regional concerns. Diefenbaker's view of Canada is not lost on so many Canadians. It is not lost on me. It was not lost on us or on Canadians when he did call out Premier Notley on budgets and energy companies and beer, or Denis Coderre on Energy East, A&W on Canadian beef, and of course, Justin Trudeau on the carbon tax. Absolutely. I heard a nod. And the way he's called them out, the way he's expressed himself, using the Tim Hortons drive-through as a way to illustrate deferring responsibility on addressing the debt. Or on election night 2016, turning on its ear James Palliser's quote that no one should live in Saskatchewan, no one should farm here, into the fighting words that no one should tell the people of Saskatchewan that anything can't be done. Or describing to Evan Solomon the federal carbon tax plan as still inchoate, and proposing that one way to make the case to the Americans about NAFTA would be to, quote, walk softly and carry a big list. Premiers' conferences will never be the same. That charisma, of course, extends to the personal. Every time the Premier walks into the room, things become more weighty, of course, but also instantly more energized and more fun. He laughs a lot. He makes people laugh. He has a sort of rebellious, mischievous humor, and always, too, a certain restlessness. He doesn't micromanage us, but I have found, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree, that one had better be armed like a litigator for the eventuality he will turn his probing questions on you. On such occasions at Cabinet, for example, he will begin by asking questions and listen and consider, and then he might take off his glasses, rub his eyes and say, I don't know about this. Then sort of purse his lips and look into the middle of distance. Kiss of death on that proposal. The other day in Cabinet was a great case in point. Something came forward that was one of those bizarrely involved policies that bureaucrats have spent years on, but ultimately hold very little bang for the buck. Premier wasn't impressed. He took his glasses off. Bad sign. And after making a reference to Animal Farm, also not good, he said, why are we doing this? You know how we sometimes say we overpay policy people? This is why. Of course, the Premier is also a spiritual person who speaks a lot about humility and honor and love for friends, for family, for province. Last spring at the Premier's dinner, he used a through-a-glass darkly metaphor to try to get at the broader picture, the broader context of, in this case, the budget and the aims of the budget. He recounted how his dad had told him at certain times to picture a parade taking place on the other side of a fence, which you couldn't really see other than what you could spot through a small hole. And he said, if we pulled ourselves up and looked over the fence, we could see the full context, which doesn't only apply to the budget or our record, but to so many things in life, which come with broader, deeper perspective and understanding. The other day, the Premier asked me how things were going, and he followed up with, are you shaking things up yet? I told him I was trying, but I'm not sure everyone would ask that question. In fact, I know they wouldn't. It's an inspiring question, worthy of the master shaker-upper himself, which we should be asking ourselves every day. Are you shaking things up yet? Premier, I promise you this, that every time I do, every time I try when you're no longer around, I will send you out a silent dedication when I think you'd like something, especially when it's ditching some Animal Farm-like policy, that this one's for you. Meanwhile, we will watch for your next chapter with true interest, and we will know, wherever you find yourself, that you will always fight for us, as we will always fight for you and for the legacy you've left us, and defend it. I'd like to end with a short poem. It's called If, which for some reason I felt compelled to send the Premier last Christmas. I never send anyone poetry. And of course, I worried after I sent it that he would think I was a bit of a weirdo. But I think he liked it. Last year, the economy, of course, wasn't looking great. The press in some quarters was turning shrill. If has a bit of a Victorian tenor, but somehow it encapsulated to me then, and continues to, many of the Premier's core traits: calm and resilience in the face of adversity, sophistication in the face of certain sophomoric scrumsters, a philosophical bent, but also the fun and drama and dramatic spirit that Brad has brought to this job and to this province. And for those of you who know the poem, there's a little tweak at the end. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be Brad Wall. Thank you, Premier. We, this province, will never forget you.